Hello everybody, it's George from Ireland, and behind me is a statue of Cecil Rhodes. I'm in Company Gardens, Cape Town, and on the pedestal it bears the legend, "Your hinterland is there." So you see him raising his left hand. No doubt his critics will unkindly say that if it was his right hand, it would be because he was the precursor of a mid-20th century political movement in Europe that no right-minded person would wish to be associated with. So it shows that South Africa has got a more mature attitude to its history than the United Kingdom does, in as much as they've left his statue in situ. I know thus far the United Kingdom has not torn down the statue of Cecil John Rhodes, though there was this very noisy campaign in Oxford University around 2008 to do so, at Oriel College, where Rhodes studied at, and that building built after his death was built with a benefaction from Mr. Rhodes. And in fact, a South African Rhodes scholar was the person who was really leading the charge, saying he must be removed, he must be dishonoured, that displaying his statue on the plaque on King Edward Street, where Rhodes kept academic residences, that's not neutral as a statement, that is really valorising him, and he ought to be dethroned because they say that he represents evil and racialism and so forth. So Cecil Rhodes was born in 1853, and you can't blame a 19th century person for not holding 21st century attitudes. If you're born in the 21st century, do you think your attitudes will pass muster in the 23rd century, long after you're dead? Probably not. Things we haven't even thought about would be considered unacceptable. Now, South Africans really do have things to complain about regarding him. You know, he was behind the Jameson raid. His doctor, Leander Starr Jameson, starting that conflict against the Transvaal Republic, defeated in short order. And of course, Jameson was not a military commander, had no lawful authority to do so, was let off very lightly indeed, a short prison sentence. The Transvaal Republic could easily have executed him. He started this conflict. It wasn't a war. He couldn't legally declare war. Started on a bogus basis of some appeal from British citizens resident of the Transvaal. You know, dozens of people have been killed, and that was all his fault. And so the Boers did not execute him, hand him over to the United Kingdom, where he got his prison sentence of several years. He was released. He later became Prime Minister of the Cape Colony, some years after the death of his idol, Cecil Rhodes. So Cecil Rhodes, yes, he was a megalomaniac with his Cairo to the Cape scheme. He allegedly also said, "I prefer land to N," but that one's not confirmed. Now, obviously, I don't hold a brief for anyone who would use racist language like that, but in the 19th century, I think that was a matter-of-fact word. It wasn't regarded as appropriate till the 1950s. So he's certainly an expansionist. Now, the people in this part of Africa, or like people all over the world, had always fought each other over resources, perhaps ideology, but the British conquest, or perhaps even prior to that, the Dutch conquest, was the only one where the vanquished were better off because of it. Now, obviously, some people got killed in these wars, and there were certain downsides to it, but you see how it advanced so much technologically and scientifically, going from the Iron Age to the Jet Age in just 2 generations in some places like Zambia and Zimbabwe, of course, were named after Rhodes in his lifetime. So Rhodes, he donated his fortune to charity when he died in 1902, just after the end of the Second South African War. He had a fortune of over £6 million. That's worth well over £1 billion in contemporary terms. So he left a lot of it to Oriel College, Oxford, and to Oxford University itself. Oriel being one of the, 29 constituent colleges of the university? 29? I think it's actually 39. And so on. The Rhodes Scholarship, which he specifically said was open to men of all races. It only took 2 years for the first black person was awarded the scholarship. He did say males who were good at manly sports. There were very, very few women attending the university in those days. I think you could say that he was sexist much more than racist. So he said that, of course, black people, mixed race people, Asian people should have a vote in South Africa if they had a certain level of education and property. But he raised that threshold, so it was very, very few. But it was a start, and he accepted the principle, and so black people in that sense were better off under him than they were 100 years later under the apartheid government. He's saying votes for civilized men. So of course he was flawed, and he certainly wanted to enrich himself. So he's a problematic, multifaceted figure, Cecil Rhodes. And there's much debate about the Rudd concession, as in Charles Rudd, one of his underlings, the treaty he signed with King Lobengula in what's now Zimbabwe, leader of the Matabele, or should that be Ndebele people. and obviously he couldn't read, and the argument is this was mistranslated for him to dupe him, and that's ended up fighting against them when he realized he wasn't just signing away mining rights. Now the Ndebele, indeed the Shona people, what's now Zimbabwe, had no ability to mine, so instead they weren't giving away anything, they weren't capable of doing this. But it's credible that he would agree to that, but not so credible he would agree to give away almost everything, and so he fought. So nations have always aggressed each other, and there was no law against it at the time. It's not, it's only after the League of Nations people agreed, no, there is no right of conquest. We will not initiate a war, but you are allowed to fight defensively. The Pact of Paris, the Kellogg-Briand Pact, the Covenant of the League of Nations, all that came after Rhodes's death. So all polities up to that time had been established by war, all of them, including here. Like Zululand, the Zulus established their kingdom through war. And so would all the indigenous peoples here. And obviously those who were bested did not benefit from it in any way. They were worse off losing their lands, their cattle and so forth. But here, although people were defeated, they became better off technologically, scientifically, which is why there's a population explosion, which is why the black population of South Africa is about 100 times higher now than it was when Jan van Riebeck landed, is it the 6th of April, 1652. Now, not to say that the whites were actuated completely by some desire for self-abnegation and charity. No, there was self-interest in that, and sometimes they were evil, abducting people, forcing them into slavery. Some of them committed crimes, rape, even murder, and there were atrocities. So not whitewashing it. There was evil done, there was also good done. But you can't say it's genocide, because genocide doesn't increase the population, it decreases it. Anyway, so I'm very glad that there's racial equality now, and no one should be denied opportunities on the grounds of race. I'm a big believer in miscegnation myself, and I've practiced it on a very personal level. So I'm glad that we can mingle freely. And just to think, in the 1980s, people of different races wouldn't even have been allowed in this garden, which is really rather shocking. So we can all be friends. And I realise that race is unimportant, it's individuality that matters. But many people didn't perceive it that way in the 19th century. So he's a complex figure, Cecil Rhodes, but I don't think that removing a statue would do anything. There was all this wealth that had lain under the soil in this part of Africa for millennia, throughout civilization, but had never been tapped because people had no ability to mine, to dig up the diamonds and gold, to be part of the world economy in order to purchase goods and services, to ameliorate the lot of the people. It's only after, say, the Kimberley diamond rush or the Johannesburg gold rush that was found at Witwatersrand in about 1886 that happened. And obviously that enormously enriched the people. But the trouble is the lion's share of that went to whites. And black people were often just reduced to menial labor, which is unjust. Everyone should have the same opportunities to enrich themselves. And I'm very glad that that's over now. So that's Cecil Rhodes, and he ought to stay here. He was a vital figure in developing the country. He's the cruciality of his role in South African history can scarce be overstated. He was pivotal. But even though there's a bad side to him, not disputing that. Well, anyway, thank you so much for watching my channel. Make sure you subscribe on Patreon, donate on PayPal, georgecallahan79@gmail.com. Toodaloo.